Chapter 1. The Time I Disappeared. Before I could catch my white stocking-clad 6-year-old leg, it slipped straight into the open toilet. I used the toilet seat as a step stool to get my stockings on. I required the height to buckle my white Mary Jane church shoes. The toilet water soaking turned to tears streaming down my face, mixed with frustration and regret. My mom was readying my brother and me for a long day at church and piling us into the family car. Our Sunday mornings unfolded like this for as long as I could remember. Sometimes Dad was with us. Other times it was just us. I wonder if Mom had the perception that she was rehearsing for what we all knew was inevitable. Great-grandma brought up Mom in church, so she brought us up in the church, although I seldom comprehended what was being said. And what I did understand, I didn't remember, except those color-coded microphones the choir would sing on. The blue, red, yellow, orange, and green rings always drew my attention as we entered the church storefront. It seemed back then Mom would do everything at church. She sang on one of the colorful mics and even played the organ effortlessly. Hallelujahs would erupt spontaneously while Sister so-and-so would dance Pentecostal praise in the aisle, her hatted head swinging back, ignoring any onlookers. White-gloved ushers stood at the doors or corrected us kids if we misbehaved. Soon, none of that mattered. As Sunday services groaned on like an old man's back, I was asleep before the whooping pastor's sermon hit its bridge. Our family is full of generations of evangelists, ministers, deacons, preachers, prophets, and pastors with churches or ministries. Church was a consistent part of my life until the divorce. I don't know what it is about divorces in church, but it seems once that covenant breaks, sometimes the freshly divorced break away from God too. In the evening hours, the yelling match between my parents made me want to stay in my room, plugging my ears. If I kept their voices mute, it wasn't real. As if my not hearing their bitter verbal tennis match would instantly render it powerless. The louder they yelled, the more my sense of self diminished, as though any further increase in their volume could make me vanish. It was clear my parents didn't like each other, even if they loved each other, and love just wasn't enough. The disappearance of their union was a prologue to an ill-timed disappearing act of my own, with no trace of magic and no disclaimer. I don't remember the day my dad said he was leaving us, but I do remember when the house was empty of him. I do remember feeling like the part of my dad that was in me went missing, and it might not ever come back. He would come by the house periodically to drop off birthday gifts and other odds and ends, but eventually he wasn't coming by at all. He had been gone so long and distanced himself so far that he stopped paying the house's mortgage. It was too much for my mom alone. The F-bomb fell loud and destructive on our suburban, nestled, storm cloud gray house, its white leather sofas, wood grain record player topped stereo system, Lux glass tables, and the waterbed I used to love to lay on in my parents' bedroom were a slow fading dream. My dad had moved us to the suburbs straight out of the crime-infested hood when we were 3 and 4. One evening we arrived home to our front door open wide like an invitation. The entertainment center toppled, our TV gone, and our dwelling violated and battered like a piñata. Our yellow Oakland Park house had gotten burgled again, leaving Mom anxious, stressed, and distraught, far more than she deserved. We started life over in the safety of the quintessential banlieues of Broward County, and it was a good life. Our elementary school was within walking distance. The neighborhood overflowed with friends playing in the cul-de-sac. The grass was green, the streets were clean, and our west side nook was alarmed and secure. Yet overnight, a war erupted, and we were soon displaced with little explanation. Why did we have to move? Why would Dad leave us? Didn't he care about what happened next? Would we be homeless? Uprooted and unstable. Life going forward was endlessly nomadic. Year over year, our home grew smaller, apartments changed restlessly, and my brother and I often shared bedrooms. Mom would work hours that kept us kids home alone and to our own devices when aftercare and summer camps were too expensive. Stability was a luxury we couldn't afford. Rents would go up and we would have to live elsewhere. When times grew tough, we were the hidden homeless. Only Mom never let us know with actual words that we were homeless. We just ended up bunking at her best friend's house or coming back home to her mom's house, who's actually our great grandmother, the evangelist. Her home was a haven too, with juicy, stringy mangoes that got stuck in our teeth, happily stealing all our cares. We smiled sweetly with the dripping slipping down our chins and the Florida summer breeze reminding us of this paradise. Sweet potato pies were baked with the tops delicately crisped at just the right amount. Grandma sold them on the side, and only one of her daughters knew her recipe. Grandma always set one to the side for us, with Mom's mail and a grocery store bag, waiting for our visit. I met Jesus at Grandma's house, but I only knew his name. As winter rolled in that year, Grandma's house would be our home for longer than we knew. My brother and I shared one of the 3 downstairs bedrooms. Grandma used to clean houses, so she showed me how to make the beds hotel style. Late at night, we'd keep the windows open, and a steady stream of cool 60-degree air would flow through, waking up the scent of the old paint, wallpaper, and wood paneling. Grandma's house smelled like refuge, praying, mangoes, and Jesus. The train would come bounding down Dixie Highway, rumbling the foundation and shaking the shiplap 2 stories. I felt like I was on the train going wherever trains go. Winter turned to spring, spring to summer, and summer to vacation Bible school. Grandma gifted us a fresh shared KJV Bible with our names, all the church we could consume, and surprise Happy Meals for being good. We were at church whenever Grandma was at church, which basically meant all week, every day. So while Mom was working and making arrangements to get us back into our apartment, Grandma ensured we knew God and were getting into heaven. But even then, God just wasn't sticking. At least, I didn't think so. But all those sermons and Bible verses went somewhere in my soul for safekeeping, and God would tap on that door of that room as often as he could. I knew he was real and never doubted I had a creator. I just didn't know how to get to him, understand him, or have an experience with him that didn't make me want to nap or run. The church bus. Night of Joy at Magic Kingdom changed that for me. It was fall 2001 and I was 12 years old. We had all piled onto the church bus. Grandma ensured I was in attendance, that we had our own apartment again. I had heard Kirk Franklin singing his song Stomp live. It was my first concert and the first time I felt some kind of fire in my belly. I didn't want to go to sleep. I wanted to listen to that CD they gave us that night until it was scratched and unplayable. My desire was to know God. To this very day, the artists I discovered that night and the songs on the compilation were a lifeline back to God whenever I strayed further than I had intended. The second time I felt the fire was when Grandma took me to a women's conference. I saw women get delivered from their demons. They called it purging, when the women spat or vomited on the floor. I wanted a closer look. I didn't understand what I was seeing, and I don't remember if I was scared, but I knew I had questions for my grandmother about why they had demons and why they spat up. We sat on the bench outside the room where the deliverance was happening. I'm sure she listened to my questions and answered what she could. And I wonder if she knew how that day would affect my life decades later. That was also probably one of those days when Grandma took me to McDonald's on the way home as we piled into her green Toyota Corolla. She drove well into her 80s, determined like my mom. Hungry wounds. A single mother raising a family in the early 2000s was common and uncommon, but my mom did it. Many of my friends had married parents. While I enjoyed 2 or even 3 Christmases and Thanksgivings to keep up with my Jamaican and Bahamian extended family, I didn't have the latest in everything, but my mom did well enough that it was hard to notice. Fortunately, I wasn't being bullied for my clothes and shoes. My brother was good about showing me how to dress as I got into high school. We had the Game Boys and other trending game systems and occasional trips to theme parks. Between mom and dad's co-parenting, we had experiences and necessities. We never missed a meal, and were never technically on the streets, even if we had to stay with friends and family for a stint. My mom's resilience and ability to keep the plate spinning with food on them sometimes seems superhuman. That may be where some mother wounds entered, along with father wounds. There was something in me craving what went missing when our household split, taking with it the nourishment I needed to thrive and develop emotionally and psychologically. My dad was usually a phone call away, but that wasn't enough. I needed him to spend regular quality time, affirm me, and show me how I should be treated. Mom and dad managed as best they could to split their time between us, though we lived with mom full time. Some planned visits with dad ended in disappointments and cancellations. When it did work, we looked forward to bookstore visits, Jamaican porridge, ackee, saltfish, fried dumplings, and patois, and just hanging out with our very education-focused father. If there was one thing we were coming home with, it was a new book and a lecture about the importance of education. Although my dad was not always physically available, he was discerning about my emotional state, especially when I didn't want to express myself. Mom, however, was more taxed than I realized as a child. The stress of keeping a roof over our heads while being unable to tend to her own emotional welfare left little for me. I have few memories of affectionate, secure, motherly embraces and gentle hugs. Though mom was good about mother-daughter days out, there was still a certain distance that never seemed to close. Entering stage left. Same-sex attraction, black beauty, and homo wounds. Looking back, when I was about 8, that distance seemed to be more than enough ground to sow attraction to the same sex. I would admire my high school aftercare counselors' long brunette hair and olive tan skin, utterly enamored. I was only in the 2nd grade, yet something about their beauty magnetized me. I yearned for any attention they would give, though I didn't understand why it felt like I almost needed it. In my young developing mind, I knew that this was not what other little girls were fixating on. And though I had my crushes on the freckle-faced, spiky-haired boys my friends and I would dare each other to approach, these feelings never outweighed what I felt when I was in the presence of my counselors. It probably didn't help that my environment was predominantly white, compounding my already complex relationship with my black skin and hair. I saw little representation in the media of those who looked like me in the 90s and early 2000s. I was often the only black child or one of 2 in my classroom until middle school. Apart from the lack of affection I received from my mom and dad growing up, the deep-rooted self-hatred that primed my tiny self-image as a black girl could have also influenced the same-sex attraction and admiration. It started with my hair. My hair was untamable, snapping the teeth of the comb difficult as it raked across my tender head. My hair was ultimately problematic and was not okay as it was. Eventually, my mom or hairdresser routinely corrected and burned my hair straight with a perm. Internally, I had determined myself to be a frustrating, unbeautiful problem, someone bad, not okay as I was. When I became cognizant of compliments, I wasn't often told I was cute or pretty unless my hair was freshly permed or extensions added. Rejected naturally, accepted unnaturally. This badness sentiment would only grow deeper. I consider now how the acceptance of my unnatural self before practicing the sin of homosexuality specifically stirred the cauldron of the enemy's pot of wicked plans to make it easy for unnatural sins to catch my attention. In those years, I wasn't told Yah made me fearfully and wonderfully, Psalm 139:14. I saw myself as unworthy, and this self-talk ripened me for rebellion against Yah's true design. So not only were black women weaponized against black women and girls, but the beauty industry was galvanized against black hair and black beauty. The media aimed its rhetoric hollow points straight into the black home, loading the mouths of unwitting black mothers. These things ricochet, shatter, and compound upon the little children. Richard Cohen, M.A., author of Healing Humanity, Time, Touch, and Talk, said, "Events like these and others are homo wounds crux." Cohen names 4 homo emotional wounds. 1. Overattachment to same-sex parent. 2. Lack of attachment to same-sex parent. 3. Abuse, mental, emotional, physical, and or sexual. And 4, parentified child role reversal between parent and child. These wounds are not static, nor created solely by kin, as we also have hetero-emotional wounds. Both contribute to staining the identity of a child. However, as it concerns homo wounds, Cohen identifies how girls and boys learn their masculinity and femininity through their relationship with their same-sex parent, same-sex friendships, and relatives. He states, if the father and son had different temperaments, and the dad was critical and rejecting of his son, this may damage the boy's sense of masculinity, and or he may develop a layer of toughness so that no one may get close to him. If the mother and her daughter were extremely different in temperaments, if the mother rejected or criticized her daughter, was aloof and detached, these and more circumstances will create a vacuum in the daughter's soul, leaving a void to be filled. Furthermore, Cohen states that hetero-emotional wounds have the same 4 wound indicators as homo wounds, only they are formed in relation to the opposite sex parent. Cohen explains faulty father-daughter bonds like this. As a woman, if your father was unavailable, abusive, or insulting to your mother, this may have led to the wounding of your own femininity and the feeling of unsafe men. Forgiveness and the experience of healthy masculine love help further heal those relational wounds. As it relates to mothers, the same is true for men. Cohen states that a child is even more challenged when a single parent attempts to take on both roles. These wounds cause an unconscious perpetual pursuit to rectify the wounds, often in unhealthy ways or with the unhealthy people. These unconscious behaviors lead to recurrent wounds in all relationships. Cohen explained, we're seeking love and approval from others of the opposite sex in an often unconscious attempt to win our father or mother's love. The same occurs when our bent is towards same-sex partners. We're seeking to gain the love and approval of our same-sex parents. From my examination of past relationships, a deeper reflection may reveal an individual is seeking mothering in a lesbian relationship, fathering in a gay relationship, or even to be the father or mother they didn't have. Ultimately, the voids created by these wounds, when ignored, can destroy a life. Some of these consequences make children bait for predators. Predators prey on the most vulnerable children, but especially wounded children. One of the catastrophic bombs that went off, exploding all over my adolescence, was 50 years old and male.